A routine day takes an unexpected turn. Natalie Brooks had seen the inside of Charlotte Douglas International Airport more times than she could count, but today felt different somehow. At 52, she had traveled this same route between Charlotte and Boston dozens of times for freelance graphic design projects. Her worn leather portfolio bag hung from her shoulder as she stood at carousel number 5, watching an endless parade of black suitcases circle past like some absurd carnival ride. She checked her phone again. The client meeting was in 3 hours, and she still needed to get to her hotel, shower, and review her presentation materials. The pressure of being a freelancer never really disappeared, even after 2 decades in the business. Every project could be the last one. Every client meeting carried the weight of future mortgage payments and grocery bills. The fateful, steak black roller bag appeared on the conveyor belt, and Natalie recognized the distinctive silver buckle on the side pocket. Or at least she thought she did. Without her reading glasses, everything beyond 10 feet became slightly fuzzy around the edges. She grabbed the handle and pulled it free from the carousel. Already mentally calculating her travel time to the Marriott downtown, the bag felt heavier than she remembered. But then again, she had packed in a hurry that morning. Her daughter Jessica had called right as she was zipping everything up, wanting to discuss Thanksgiving plans that were still 3 months away. The conversation had left Natalie distracted and running late, which explained why she nearly missed her flight. She made it to the taxi stand and gave the driver her hotel address. Only when she was settled in the back seat watching the airport recede in the rearview mirror did she notice the monogrammed leather luggage tag dangling from the handle. Her suitcase definitely did not have a monogrammed tag. A shocking discovery, Natalie's stomach dropped as she flipped the tag over. Julian Remington was embossed in elegant script across cream-colored leather. Below the name was a phone number with a New York area code and an address that made her swallow hard. Park Avenue. This was not good. With trembling fingers, she unzipped the suitcase. The contents confirmed her worst fears. Everything inside spoke of wealth that existed in a completely different universe from her own. Designer suits still wrapped in garment bags from what had to be an expensive dry cleaner. Italian leather shoes that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. A laptop so thin and sleek, it looked like something from a science fiction movie. 3 leather notebooks with gilt-edged pages. She found a small wooden box tucked between the folded shirts. Inside was a watch that made her breath catch. Even with her limited knowledge of luxury items, she could tell this was worth serious money. The kind of money that would make losing it a very big problem for whoever owned it. At the bottom of the suitcase, beneath a layer of carefully folded cashmere sweaters, she discovered a manila folder marked personal. Her accountant instincts told her not to open it. Her human curiosity won the battle. Inside was a stack of photographs held together with a paperclip. The top photo showed a man in his early 40s standing with a teenage girl, maybe 13 or 14 years old. They were at what looked like a horse farm, both smiling, but with a visible distance between them. The kind of distance that suggested the camera had captured a rare moment of togetherness rather than a common occurrence. Written on the back in neat handwriting were the words "Rebecca and I, last summer. Try harder this year. The angry call Natalie's." Phone rang before she could process the emotional weight of what she had just read. The number on the screen matched the one on the luggage tag. "Hello." She tried to keep her voice steady. "You have my suitcase." The voice on the other end was deep, controlled, but with an underlying current of barely restrained frustration. This was clearly a man used to things going according to plan, and right now nothing was going according to plan. "I am so incredibly sorry," Natalie began, words tumbling out in a rush. "I wasn't paying attention at baggage claim. I thought it was mine. They look exactly the same, and I was in a hurry. And I know that's no excuse, but I swear I didn't mean to take your things." There was a heavy silence on the other end, then a long exhale that sounded like a man trying very hard to maintain his composure. "Where are you right now?" "In a taxi? Heading into the city, but I can turn around right away. I can come straight back to the airport. Whatever is easiest for you." "I'm not at the airport anymore." The frustration in his voice intensified. "I'm at a board meeting downtown. A board meeting I'm supposed to be presenting at, except my presentation materials are in my suitcase. Which you currently have. Natalie felt her face burn with embarrassment. I am so sorry. Just tell me where to bring it. I'll get there as fast as I can. The Crawford Building on State Street. 42nd floor. How quickly can you get here? Each word was clipped, precise, the tone of someone who measured everything in minutes and dollars. 20 minutes. Maybe 15 if traffic cooperates. Natalie leaned forward and gave the taxi driver the new address, apologizing for the change of plans. I'll be waiting in the lobby. Paused. And when he spoke again, there was something else in his voice besides frustration. Something that sounded almost like resignation. I assume you have my presentation folder? I haven't looked through everything, Natalie said honestly. But yes, there are folders and a laptop. Fine, just get here as quickly as you can. The line went dead. The meeting, the Crawford Building, was exactly the kind of imposing glass and steel structure that Natalie associated with corporate power. She paid the taxi driver and hurried through the revolving doors, pulling the expensive black suitcase behind her and clutching her own shabby bag in her other hand. He was standing near the security desk. Impossible to miss, even in a lobby full of business professionals. Julian Remington looked exactly like his photographs, but the pictures hadn't captured the intensity that radiated from him even when standing still. Dark hair starting to gray at the temples. Sharp features. An expensive charcoal suit that fit perfectly. And eyes that assessed her in 3 seconds flat, cataloging everything about her from her discount store blazer to her scuffed practical shoes. Natalie Brooks. His voice was the same one from the phone call, but seeing him in person made the controlled frustration more apparent. That's me. She rolled his suitcase toward him. Again, I cannot apologize enough for this mix-up. Here's your bag. And this one is mine. She gestured to her own suitcase, which looked even more worn and pathetic next to his expensive luggage. Julian grabbed his suitcase and immediately unzipped it, checking the contents with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly what should be there. His shoulders relaxed slightly when he found the folder he needed. Everything appears to be here. I didn't take anything, Natalie said quickly. I only opened it to confirm whose bag I had taken. Well, I did see the photographs. The ones in the personal folder? I wasn't snooping. I just wanted to make absolutely sure I had the right person's luggage before I called, or before you called me. Something flickered across Julian's face at the mention of the photographs. The professional mask slipped just slightly, revealing something vulnerable underneath. You saw the picture of my daughter. I did. She's beautiful. You both looked happy. Natalie wasn't sure why she added that last part, but it felt important to say. Julian's jaw tightened. That was taken 14 months ago. It was one of 3 weekends last year that she agreed to spend time with me. I'm not exactly winning any Father of the Year awards. It's the honesty in his admission surprised Natalie. She had expected him to remain cold and professional, to take his suitcase and disappear into his important meeting with his important presentation. Instead, he was standing here admitting painful personal truths to a complete stranger who had accidentally stolen his luggage. I have a daughter, too, Natalie heard herself say. Jessica. She's 28 now. We talk maybe once a month, and even then the conversations feel forced, like we're strangers trying to remember how to be family. Julian looked at her with sudden sharp attention, really seeing her for the first time instead of just seeing the woman who had inconvenienced him. How did that happen? If you don't mind me asking, Natalie laughed, but it came out bitter. I worked too much. My marriage fell apart when she was 12. I threw myself into building my freelance business, telling myself I was providing for her, setting a good example, teaching her about independence and career success. Turns out I was just teaching her that work matters more than relationships. By the time I realized what I had done, she was already pulling away. I built a company, Julian said quietly, his anger completely gone now. Remington Capital Management. We handle investment portfolios for some of the wealthiest families in America. Very demanding. Very time-consuming. I missed Rebecca's dance recitals. Missed her birthday parties. Missed everything that mattered because I was busy making money and closing deals. My ex-wife tried to tell me what I was losing, but I didn't listen. By the time the divorce was final, I had become exactly what I never wanted to be. The absent father, the workaholic who sends expensive gifts instead of showing up. They stood there in the busy lobby. Two people who had accidentally collided because of mixed-up luggage, sharing wounds they usually kept carefully hidden. Around them, business professionals rushed past, everyone focused on their own urgent destinations and important meetings. But Natalie and Julian had stopped moving, caught in a moment of unexpected connection. "I should let you go," Natalie finally said. "You have your board meeting?" Julian glanced at his watch, another automatic gesture. But this time, instead of calculating lost minutes, he seemed to be considering something else entirely. "The meeting can wait 5 more minutes? Would you mind if I asked you something?" "Of course not. Do you think it's too late?" His voice held an uncertainty that didn't match his powerful appearance. "To fix things with our children? To try to be better than we were? Or have we missed our chance completely?" Natalie thought about Jessica. Thought about the strained phone calls and the holidays spent feeling like a guest in her own daughter's life. Thought about all the moments she could never get back. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think the only thing worse than trying and failing would be never trying at all. At least then we'd know we did everything we could." Julian nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. "You're right. Thank you for that. And thank you for returning my suitcase so quickly despite the inconvenience to yourself. It was entirely my fault." Natalie picked up her own suitcase handle. "Good luck with your presentation. And with your daughter, wait." Julian reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a business card. "I know this is unusual, but would you mind if I called you sometime? Not for business. Just to talk. About how the conversation with my daughter goes. About whether trying to fix things actually works." Natalie took the card, surprised by the offer. "I'd like that. And I'll let you know how things go with Jessica, too." They exchanged contact information, and as Natalie finally walked out of the Crawford building, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. A small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become the person she wanted to be. The mother she should have been all along. The call that changed everything 3 days after the airport incident. Natalie sat in her small apartment in Charlotte, staring at Julian Remington's business card. She had placed it on her desk next to her computer where she found herself looking at it several times a day. Each time, she wondered if he had actually called his daughter. If he had found the courage to try. Her own phone conversations with Jessica had been the same as always. Polite, surface level. Her daughter talked about work projects and weekend plans with friends. Never once asking if Natalie wanted to visit or suggesting they spend time together. The distance between them felt like an ocean that kept growing wider, no matter how hard Natalie tried to swim across it. On Thursday evening, her phone rang with a New York number. Her heart jumped as she answered. "Natalie, it's Julian Remington. From the airport situation." His voice sounded different than it had in the lobby. Less controlled. More human. "Julian, hello? I was wondering if you'd call." Natalie set down the design project she had been working on. "How did your board meeting go?" "The presentation went fine. But that's not why I'm calling." He paused, and Natalie could hear something in that silence. Something raw and unsteady. "I called Rebecca. Actually called her, not just sent a text or an email. We talked for 2 hours." 2 hours? That's wonderful. Natalie felt genuine happiness for this man she barely knew. "It was terrifying," Julian admitted. "I apologize for missing so much of her life. For choosing work over being her father. For all the recitals and games and moments I can never get back. I expected her to be angry or to hang up on me. But she just listened. And then she started crying. And then I started crying. We both just cried on the phone like idiots." Natalie found her own eyes getting misty. "That doesn't sound like idiocy. That sounds like honesty." She told me she'd been waiting for years for me to acknowledge what I'd done wrong. That she didn't need expensive gifts or college tuition checks. She just needed me to see her. To really see her.
Ow.
Julian's voice cracked slightly. "We're having dinner next Friday. Just the 2 of us. No fancy restaurant. No agenda. Just dinner and conversation. I'm absolutely terrified." "You should be terrified. That means it matters to you." Natalie walked to her window, looking out at the quiet street below. Fear is just love trying to protect itself from disappointment. It's very wise. Did you read that somewhere? No, I just made it up. But it feels true, doesn't it? Julian laughed, a real laugh that sounded nothing like the frustrated CEO from the airport. Have you talked to Jessica yet? Really talked to her? Natalie felt her stomach tighten. No, I keep meaning to call, but I don't know what to say. How do you apologize for years of emotional absence? How do you tell your adult daughter that you finally figured out you were doing everything wrong, but it took you decades to realize it? The same way I did, Julian said gently. You just start talking and hope the words come out right. You want to know what finally made me pick up the phone? What? Meeting you? Realizing I wasn't alone in this particular kind of failure? That maybe if someone else understood what I was feeling, then maybe Rebecca could understand too. You gave me permission to be imperfect. To admit I had made mistakes. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. Natalie felt something shift in her chest. A door opening that had been locked for years. Will you stay on the phone with me while I call her? Right now. Right now. Before I lose my nerve? A mother's courage. Julian didn't hang up. Instead, Natalie heard him say, I'll be right here. I'm putting you on mute, but I'm not going anywhere. With shaking fingers, Natalie dialed her daughter's number. Each ring felt like an eternity. She almost hung up twice before Jessica answered. Mom? Is everything okay? Jessica's voice immediately went to concern. Because the only time Natalie called outside their scheduled monthly conversations was when something was wrong. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I just wanted to talk to you. Really talk to you. Do you have a few minutes? There was a pause. Sure. Let me just close my office door. Natalie heard movement, a door clicking shut. Then Jessica's voice again. Okay, I'm here. What's going on? I need to apologize to you. Natalie's voice trembled, but she pushed forward. For your entire childhood. For being physically present, but emotionally absent. For making you feel like my work was more important than you were. For teaching you that success meant sacrificing relationships. For all of it. The silence on the other end stretched so long that Natalie thought the call had dropped. Then she heard her daughter take a shaky breath. Mom, where is this coming from? From finally being honest with myself. I retired from regular work last year thinking I'd be happy, thinking I'd finally have time to enjoy life. But all I feel is empty. Because I built a career and lost my family in the process, I lost you. And I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I want to be your mother again. Really be your mother? You never stopped being my mother, Jessica said. And Natalie could hear tears in her voice now. You just stopped being present. Do you know how many times I wanted to call you just to talk? Not about anything important, just to hear your voice and tell you about my day. But I always felt like I was bothering you. Like your time was too valuable to waste on my small problems. Natalie pressed her hand against her mouth, fighting back sobs. You were never a waste of my time. Never. I was just so focused on proving I could be successful on my own after the divorce. On showing everyone, including myself, that I didn't need anyone. But I was wrong. I needed you. I still need you. I need you too, Mom. Jessica's voice broke completely. I've needed you for so long, they cried together across the phone line. Years of accumulated hurt and longing spilling out in ragged breaths and choked words. When they could finally speak again, Jessica said, Can you come visit? Next weekend, maybe. Just for a few days. We could cook together like we used to when I was little. Before everything got complicated. I would love that more than anything in the world. Bring your old recipe cards. The ones Grandma gave you. I want to learn how to make her chocolate cake. The real way, not from a box. Natalie laughed through her tears. I still have every single one of those cards. I'll bring them all. They talked for another hour. Really talked in a way they hadn't done in over a decade. About Jessica's work designing sustainable architecture. About her partner David, who Natalie had only met twice. About how they were thinking about having children soon, and Jessica was terrified of repeating the same mistakes her parents had made. You won't, Natalie assured her, because you already see the pitfalls. You're already aware of what matters. That puts you miles ahead of where I was at your age." When they finally hung up, Natalie remembered Julian was still on the line. She took him off mute. "Are you still there?" "I'm here." His voice was thick with emotion. "That was beautiful. You were so brave." "I'm shaking like a leaf." Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Julian paused. "Thank you for letting me be part of that moment, even just as a silent witness. Thank you for giving me the push I needed." Natalie wiped her eyes. "I wouldn't have made that call without knowing you were there." 6 months of transformation, the months that followed, brought changes neither Natalie nor Julian could have anticipated. They stayed in touch, calling each other every few weeks to share updates and offer support. Their friendship became a lifeline, a safe space where they could be honest about their struggles and celebrate their victories. Julian's dinners with Rebecca became weekly events. Slowly, carefully, they rebuilt their relationship. He learned about her passion for environmental law, attended her mock trial competitions, met her boyfriend, and managed not to be the overbearing father he had always feared becoming. Rebecca even agreed to spend Thanksgiving with him, just the two of them, cooking together in his penthouse kitchen that had never been used for anything more elaborate than reheating. Takeout Natalie visited Jessica every month. They cooked together, went to farmers markets, took long walks through Jessica's neighborhood talking about everything and nothing. Natalie met David's parents, started being included in group texts with Jessica's friends, slowly became part of her daughter's daily life instead of an obligation on the calendar. In March, Jessica called with news that made Natalie cry happy tears for the first time in years. She was pregnant, and she wanted her mother to be there, not just for the birth, but for doctor's appointments and baby shopping and all the small moments that made up the journey to motherhood. "I want you to teach me how to be a good mom," Jessica said. "The things you did right, not the things you did wrong. Because there were good things, Mom. I remember them. I just want to make sure I don't lose sight of them like you did." Natalie promised she would be there for all of it, an unexpected reunion in late April. 6 months after the airport incident, Natalie received an invitation to a charity gala in Boston. One of her clients was being honored and had asked her to attend as their guest. She almost declined, not being much for fancy events. But something made her say yes. The ballroom was elegant and crowded, filled with Boston's philanthropic elite. Natalie felt out of place in her simple black dress, surrounded by designer gowns and expensive jewelry. She was debating leaving early when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Natalie Brooks. Is that really you?" She turned to find Julian Remington standing there in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking every bit the successful CEO, but his eyes held the warmth of a friend. Not the cold assessment of that first meeting in the Crawford Building lobby. "Julian, what are you doing here?" Remington Capital is one of the event sponsors. "I'm supposed to be networking," he grinned. "But honestly, I was looking for an excuse to escape to the balcony. Care to join me?" They found a quiet corner outside, away from the crowd and the orchestral music. The spring air was cool and fresh after the stuffy ballroom. "How's Rebecca?" Natalie asked. Julian's entire face transformed when he smiled. "She's wonderful. We have dinner every Sunday now. She's teaching me about climate policy, and I'm learning more than I ever did in business school. Last week she told me she was proud of me. Proud of the changes I've made. Do you know how long I've waited to hear those words?" "I can imagine." Natalie pulled her shawl tighter against the evening breeze. "Jessica's baby is due in August. A girl. They're naming her Caroline, after my mother. Jessica asked if I'd stay with them for the first month to help. Said she couldn't imagine going through new motherhood without me. That's incredible. You must be over the moon." "I am, but I'm also terrified. What if I mess it up again? What if I give the wrong advice? Or say the wrong thing?" Julian put a hand on her shoulder. "You won't, Dial. Because this time, you're showing up. That's the difference. That's everything." They stood together in comfortable silence to people who had found friendship in the most unlikely circumstances, to people who had been brave enough to face their failures and fight for second chances. "You know what's funny?" Natalie said. "If I hadn't grabbed the wrong suitcase that day, none of this would have happened. I would have gone to my client meeting, flown home, and continued living my quiet, lonely life. You would have given your presentation, flown back to New York, and kept avoiding the hard conversations. Sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need, even if it arrives in the form of a luggage mix-up. Julian looked at her thoughtfully. I've been thinking about starting a foundation. Something focused on helping workaholic parents reconnect with their children, providing resources, counseling, support groups. Would you be interested in helping me develop it? Are you serious? Completely serious. We both know how hard this journey is, how isolating it feels. What if we could make it easier for other people? What if that one mistake at the airport could end up helping hundreds of families? Natalie felt that familiar spark of purpose that had been missing since her retirement. But this time, it wasn't about building a career or proving her worth. It was about making a real difference in people's lives. Absolutely in. They shook hands, but it quickly turned into a hug. Two former strangers who had become true friends. Two broken people who had helped each other heal. The foundation takes shape by summer. The Remington Brooks Family Reconnection Foundation was more than just an idea. Julian had secured funding and office space in downtown Boston. Natalie had relocated from Charlotte, finding a cozy apartment near the waterfront that felt more like home than anywhere she had lived in years. Together, they built something neither could have created alone. The foundation offered free counseling for estranged parents and adult children, workshops on healing broken relationships, support groups for workaholics trying to find balance. Natalie handled the program development while Julian managed the business operations. They made a surprisingly effective team, their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. On a humid July afternoon, they hosted their first family reconciliation workshop. 23 people showed up, filling the small conference room they had rented. Parents who had missed their children's childhoods, adult children trying to forgive absent fathers and mothers, everyone carrying the same wounds that Natalie and Julian knew so intimately. Natalie stood at the front of the room, more nervous than she had been for any client presentation in her 30-year career. My name is Natalie Brooks, and 6 months ago I accidentally took a stranger's suitcase at the airport. That mistake changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. She told their story. The anger and frustration of that first phone call. The vulnerable conversation in the building lobby. The courage it took to finally be honest with Jessica. She didn't hide anything. Didn't make herself look better than she was. She just told the truth. When she finished, Julian stood and shared his own journey. His voice was steady as he described years of missed dance recitals and birthday parties. The photograph he carried as a reminder of his failures. The terrifying phone call with Rebecca that started their healing process. We're not experts, Julian said, looking around the room at all the hurting faces. We're just two people who finally decided that being honest was less painful than pretending everything was fine. If we can do this, anyone can. The room erupted with questions and stories. A father who hadn't spoken to his son in 8 years. A mother whose daughter refused to let her meet her grandchildren. A young woman who desperately wanted to forgive her workaholic parents but didn't know how. Each story was unique, but the underlying pain was universal. By the end of the 3-hour workshop, several families had committed to attempting reconciliation. Contact information was exchanged. Counseling appointments were scheduled, and Natalie and Julian stood together watching it all unfold. Knowing they had found their purpose. Caroline's arrival 2 weeks later, Natalie got the call she had been waiting for. Jessica was in labor. She caught the first flight to Portland, her heart racing the entire way. Julian texted her encouragement. You're going to be an amazing grandmother. Breathe and be present. That's all that matters. Caroline Rose entered the world at 3 a.m. on August 15th, weighing 7 pounds and 2 ounces. Natalie was in the delivery room, holding Jessica's hand, crying tears of joy as her daughter became a mother. It was the most beautiful moment of her life. For the next month, Natalie stayed with Jessica and David. She changed diapers and did laundry and cooked meals while the new parents navigated sleepless nights and the overwhelming reality of caring for a tiny human. But more than the practical help, she provided emotional support. She listened when Jessica worried about doing everything wrong, reassured her when postpartum hormones made everything feel impossible, held Caroline when Jessica needed to shower or sleep or just have 5 minutes to herself. "You're a natural at this," Jessica said one morning, watching her mother rock the baby with practiced ease. "I'm just doing what I should have done 30 years ago," Natalie replied. "Being present, putting someone else's needs before my own agenda. It's not complicated. I just made it complicated before. You're making up for lost time." Jessica reached over and squeezed her mother's hand, and I'm grateful for every minute of it. On Labor Day weekend, Julian came to visit. He had asked permission weeks in advance, not wanting to intrude on family time. But Jessica insisted he come, saying that anyone important to her mother was welcome in their home. He arrived with gifts for the baby and flowers for Jessica. David opened the door and immediately liked him, recognizing a fellow reformed workaholic. They spent the afternoon on the back patio while Caroline napped, talking about fatherhood and career ambitions and finding balance. "She's perfect," Julian whispered. When Natalie let him hold the sleeping baby, his eyes got misty as he looked down at Caroline's tiny face. "This is what matters. This right here, not quarterly earnings or board meetings or any of it. Just this. Have you told Rebecca about the foundation?" Natalie asked. "I did. She wants to help. She's talking about doing pro bono legal work for families dealing with custody issues related to parental estrangement." Julian carefully adjusted his hold on the baby, natural, despite his nervousness. "She said she's proud of me for turning our painful experience into something that helps others. You should be proud of yourself, too." "I am. For the first time in my life, I'm actually proud of something besides my professional accomplishments." He looked up at Natalie. "Thank you for that. For showing me there was another way to live." Thanksgiving Miracles November arrived with crisp air, the promise of holidays that felt different than any that had come before. The foundation had grown beyond their wildest expectations. They now had 5 full-time counselors to support groups running weekly, and a waiting list of families wanting to participate in their reconciliation. Workshops. Natalie and Julian decided to host a Thanksgiving dinner at the foundation office for anyone who was spending the holiday alone or rebuilding family connections. They expected maybe 10 or 15 people. 47 showed up. The office was transformed with borrowed tables and mismatched chairs. Julian cooked 3 turkeys in his penthouse kitchen and transported them in warming boxes. Natalie made her grandmother's famous sweet potato casserole and enough green beans to feed an army. Everyone contributed something, turning the dinner into a true community feast. Rebecca came, bringing her boyfriend and a homemade pumpkin pie. Jessica and David drove down from Portland with baby Caroline, now 3 months old, and capturing everyone's hearts. Other families from their workshops attended, many reuniting with estranged children or parents for the first time in years. Before they ate, "Gosh," Julian stood to say a few words. 6 months ago, I was planning to spend Thanksgiving alone in my apartment, ordering takeout and reviewing financial reports. That was my tradition for years. Safe, predictable, and completely empty. Today, I'm standing here surrounded by family. Not just my daughter, who has given me the gift of a second chance, but all of you. This community we've built together." He paused, visibly emotional. "Natalie and I joked that a luggage mix-up changed our lives. But the truth is, we changed our own lives. We chose to be vulnerable, chose to be honest, chose to show up even when it was terrifying. Every single person in this room has made that same choice. You've all chosen courage over comfort, and that's worth celebrating." The room erupted in applause. Natalie stood next to Julian, holding baby Caroline, surrounded by her daughter and new friends who had become family. She thought about that day at the airport, grabbing the wrong suitcase in her typical distracted hurry. How such a simple mistake had led to this moment. "Should we tell them?" Julian whispered. "Tell us what?" Rebecca asked, overhearing Julian and Natalie exchange glances. They had been discussing an idea for weeks, but hadn't made it public yet. "We're expanding the foundation," Natalie announced. "We've secured funding to open branches in 5 cities over the next year. New York, Charlotte, Seattle, Denver, and Chicago. We want to help as many families as possible find their way back to each other." The room filled with excited chatter. Several people immediately volunteered to help with the expansion. Others shared ideas for new programs and outreach strategies. The energy was electric, everyone united in the common goal of healing broken relationships. Full circle on New Year's Eve. Natalie stood on Julian's penthouse balcony, watching fireworks bloom over the Boston skyline. Inside, the party continued. Rebecca and her boyfriend, Jessica, David, and Caroline. A dozen friends from the foundation. Music and laughter filled the elegant space that had once been a lonely symbol of corporate success. Julian joined her outside, handing her a glass of champagne. 2 wrong suitcases and right connections, he toasted. 2 second chances and new beginnings, Natalie replied. They clinked glasses and drank, comfortable in the silence that followed. A year ago, neither of them could have imagined being here, being happy, being surrounded by love and purpose. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had grabbed the right suitcase that day? Julian asked. Every day, Natalie admitted, and I'm grateful I didn't. Some mistakes are actually blessings in disguise. We just have to be brave enough to recognize them. I've been thinking, Julian said carefully, about expanding the foundation internationally. London, Paris, Tokyo. This problem isn't unique to America. Families everywhere struggle with the same issues. That's ambitious, I know. But I also know we can do it, together. He turned to face her. You're the best business partner I've ever had. The best friend, too. I don't want to do any of this without you. Natalie felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the champagne. I'm not going anywhere. We started this journey together, and we'll continue it together. Inside, someone turned up the music. Jessica appeared at the balcony door, baby Caroline asleep on her shoulder. Mom, it's almost midnight. Come inside. They rejoined the party just as the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Natalie looked around the room at all the faces she loved. Her daughter and granddaughter, Julian and Rebecca, friends who had become family. 7, 6, 5. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago. Lonely, purposeless, going through the motions of life without really living it. 4, 3, 2. And she thought about the woman she was now. Connected, purposeful, fully alive for the first time in decades. 1. Happy New Year. The room exploded with celebration. Hugs and kisses and champagne toasts. Julian pulled Natalie into a warm embrace. Thank you, he whispered. For everything. Thank you for calling me that day. For being brave enough to be vulnerable with a stranger. We're not strangers anymore. No, Natalie agreed, pulling back to smile at him. We're family. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and Natalie was back in her apartment, she found the original luggage tag from Julian's suitcase. She had kept it, tucked in a drawer, a reminder of where everything started. On impulse, she took it to her home office and pinned it to the bulletin board above her desk. Tomorrow, the foundation would open its doors for the new year. There would be families to counsel, workshops to run, expansion plans to implement. But tonight, Natalie simply stood in her apartment, looking at that small leather tag with Julian Remington's name embossed in gold, and smiled. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best outcomes. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to find yourself. And sometimes a wrong suitcase at an airport baggage claim is exactly the right thing you needed all along.